In the meanwhile, though, Sergeant Baker lost no time in condemning the government's move. Foremost in the minds of local police is that the Glesic's crime was not one of passion, but the cold-blooded killing of an officer going about his duty.
We're all rather shocked at the announcement this afternoon and disappointed at the Minister's decision to have them released.
Well, will there be industrial action over it?
I can't say at this stage. We intend calling a meeting of the Newcastle Police on Friday. We'll discuss the matter there and see what action comes from that meeting.
But surely their release was inevitable in light of the government's plan to clear out the jails before this truth in sentencing comes in.
Well, I'd say if you're going to clear the jails out, the last people you'd want on the street would be police killers. If they're going to go out there and shoot police, they're the ones that should be behind bars. And I personally would dispute having them on the street mainly because of that decision.
Mrs Najobi is spending 2 days in Newcastle. Much of her time is being spent meeting Aboriginal people and learning about their customs. Today she visited a Wabakal in Hamilton. Tomorrow she will see the Multicultural Centre in Broadmeadow. But tonight's talk to union representatives and women's organisations was a chance to explain some of the horrors of life in South Africa. As deputy head of the African National Congress Women's Section and as a retired teacher, she has particular concern for women and, of course, for the children.
When our people, women, for instance, or even children, for instance, have been involved in political activities, they get arrested just in the same way as men. And when they are detained or when they are imprisoned, they are tortured. And there's no difference in the torture, for instance, for adults and for children. Even children are tortured with electric shocks, with beatings, with hoodwinking, with plastic bags, or anything that is done to adults, it will be done to the children as well.
And although she prays for a peaceful solution, it could be a long way off.
Every day people are dying because they are just shot, you know. Sometimes even if people have not done anything, they get shot. And it's becoming quite common to have, for instance, even children affected, you see, by what are regarded as stray bullets. But the fact is, these result from the violence of the regime. It is the regime that is brutal. It is the regime that is violent.
With home loan interest rates at a record high, any news of an interest rate drop is good news. The Newcastle Permanent Building Society is offering its customers the choice of a variable rate of 17% or a new fixed rate of 15% to be held for the coming year. The new capped rate is the lowest in a round of interest rate falls by banks and building societies in the region. They're now likely to lower their rate to that of the Newcastle Permanent. If a borrower chooses the new 15% rate on a loan of $50,000, it means a saving of $80 a month compared with the current variable rate. According to a spokesman from the Newcastle Permanent, the new rate is an indication that home loan interest rates for existing borrowers may ease. But the relief will be slow, with the rate expected to float above 15.5% in the coming year. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
The NBN Cameron Handicap for years has been the feature event at the Newcastle Spring Racing Carnival. Thousands of people today packed the Broadmeadow track, not only for the racing, but the spectacle. Brenda Ambler from New Lambton took out the $500 first prize for the best dressed lady with this blue multicoloured skirt and top. However, after the Fashion Awards, all eyes focused on the handicap.
Don't play coming into it nicely. On the outside, Royal Rule behind them, Plum Shore. Groucho with a wall of horses in front of it, and then came Kentire Star at the 200, and Majestic Drums the leader. Don't play in second place coming after it, and then came Prince Trail there starting to run home nicely, and Kentire Star down the outside, but Don't Play's taking the lead from Majestic Drums. Groucho's coming home well on the outside, but Don't Play's too good. Don't Play comes to defeat either Groucho and Prince Trialia. Then came Majestic Drum.
Larry Olsen rode Don't Play for the honours 1.5 lengths ahead of the favourite Groucho. The dividends for race 6, Don't Play paid $10.60 and $2.80, Groucho paid $1.30 and Prince Trialia paid $2.20. The Quinella on numbers 2 and 1 paid $8.10 and the Trifecta on numbers 2, 1 and 7 paid $134.20. It's the first win for Don't Play since his Ascot Handicap triumph at Eagle Farm in June. Winning jockey Larry Olsen was presented with his trophy by NBN General Manager Joe Sweeney. Larry says he wasn't sure his mount had the goods as they left the barrier.
Well, we had our share of anxieties early in the race. He didn't begin as well as I thought he might. I'd ridden him in Brisbane and he began very quick. But today, even though he jumped well, he didn't muster the speed that I know he can. And I had to ride him quite hard in the first furlong of the race to try and get myself into a position.
Trainer Noel Doyle says the chestnut has a long way to go.
He's a very honest little horse and he's a dogged little fella. He'll just keep trying and trying and trying, and once he gets to the front he takes a lot of beating.
Future plans for him?
Running the Epsom. Then from then on, well, we don't know. We haven't planned any further than the Epsom as yet.
The Spring Carnival continues tomorrow at Broadmeadow with the running of the Winfield Cup.
The movie concept was an innovative idea by the teachers to make school fun while still a learning experience. The story begins with a group of gangsters taking over the school and rearranging the rules until the mild-mannered hero steps in to restore law and order. The production involved several classes and took nearly 2 weeks to shoot and edit. Teacher Stephen Pascoe says the project encapsulated the complete learning process.
Basically reading skills, that's a primary skill, but principally you're boosting their morale. And when you boost their morale, they want to come to school that little bit more. They enjoy their learning environment. And when they're in an environment that they enjoy, they just happen to learn more efficiently.
The film, complete with mobbing crowds and chauffeur-driven limousines, will have its grand premiere at Old Sydney Town on Friday night, and there's every chance we're watching the stars of the future.
They're fairly immodest, so I think you'll have a few stars.
This humble device has proven to be a great weapon for Newcastle Police. In 6 hours last night, officers received 200 calls, a quarter of which will be investigated. Following the tip-offs, marijuana seedlings worth when cultivated $1 million were confiscated from a Merriweather address this afternoon.
We made a few inquiries from the information and subsequently got a search warrant. We went to a house and discovered a large quantity of plants, fertiliser, pots, seeds and prepared Indian hemp.
Today, Chief Inspector Ian Cleary says police will investigate new evidence relating to serious crimes 2 and 5 years ago. The Chief Inspector says the concept of the phone-in has been a great success, and although people can call police at any time, they need encouragement to ring.
We have to put a special time on sometimes to prompt people to tell us what they know, and they know a lot of information, and we ask them to tell us, to help them.
The debate in Brunkerville centres on this site. The owners want to develop a sawmill here, a small venture they say which will employ 2 to 3 people. But the issue has sparked bitter division in the local community. Those against say a sawmill will jeopardise the peaceful lifestyle of the Mulbring Valley. They fear pollution, noise and heavy traffic, concerns echoed in a town planning report presented last night to Cessnock Council.
The visual impact of a sawmill on the surrounding countryside, it's a rural, tranquil area, a grazing area, and the noise generated by a sawmill in the area the fact that it's not compatible with surrounding land use, and there was a major problem for the entrance to the development. It would come off a major highway, and there was concern for the timber jinkers turning left and right onto the highway.
But the man behind the development feels he's been treated unfairly, and in his words, it stinks.
I've met the requirements of the council, and as far as pollution goes, the sawdust that will come out of the sawmill, council said that it'll be blowing all over Brunkerville, down into the creeks and so forth. On the development application, that was stated that it would be put up into a sawdust bin, taken away with a truck. So there'll be no burning, there'll be no pollution from sawdust, nothing.
And Noel Beeston isn't alone in wanting a sawmill in Brunkerville. Other long-time residents roundly condemn the so-called newcomers to the valley who've lobbied against the development.
Absolutely ridiculous. It's just plain nonsense. They were going on a whole lot of garbled hysteria and prejudice, and I'd say that prejudice would have been the main force that compelled these people to object.
For the moment, there'll be no sawmill in Brunkerville, a victory for the residents who fought the development. But Noel Beeston and his family are not resigned to council's verdict.
I don't feel that it's completely finished with yet.
Hands to close tagging stations! Stand by to worship!
10 days at sea and these young trainees have mastered the skills needed to sail this majestic square rigger. Each day they tackle a system of rigging that would baffle any landlubber.
Patrol between masts, stay sail! Check away on the ship.
Now, how many ropes would there be on board this ship?
Hundreds. Hundreds. And within a couple of days they have to know where each one is and what each one does.
The young Endeavour was Britain's bicentennial gift to Australia. Since her maiden voyage in 1987, hundreds of young people have completed the 10-day sail training program supervised by the Royal Australian Navy. Most come aboard with little or no knowledge of sailing. They leave capable of operating the 44-metre brigantine. Life at sea is a far cry from secretarial school for 21-year-old Georgia Clinton of Dudley. She's one of 5 young people from the Hunter who joined the young Endeavour in Brisbane after winning their berth in a ballot.
It was really hard to get to know the ropes and the work on ship. It was good.
What about seasickness?
I won't mention that. First 4 days I did.
Oh, yeah, first day out was pretty rough. Most of us were over the side.
It's no pleasure cruise. In fact, it's more like self-development at sea.
I've learnt to get along with a lot of people in close confines because we're on board for 10 days. We're all living together. I've learned a lot about teamwork, getting in and helping and everybody doing their bit.
Back to solid ground today and an end to swaying decks for the fledgling sailors. 3 days in port and the young Endeavour sails for Sydney with a fresh crew of trainees. Leslie Robinson for NBN News. The future of the Barrington Tops National Park rests on the delicate balance between recreation and conservation. The draft management plan drawn up by the National Parks and Wildlife Service claims to have achieved that balance.
It suggests that quite a lot of the park is going to be wilderness. About 72% of it is to be wilderness, and that's essentially the steep rainforest areas.
However, conservationists remain unimpressed with the exclusion of the Barrington Plateau from the designated wilderness area.
It seems that a road into the Barrington Plateau is access to a very sensitive area when there's already a lot of public access to Barrington Tops and in all the state forests around. So it's really unnecessary and it's going to cost an inordinate amount of money, which could be better spent controlling Scotch broom.
In the other camp, the Recreational Vehicles Association.
Generally, the four-wheel drive movement believe it's a good, well-balanced plan that should be supported.
The recreational drivers dispute much of the information put forward by the Wilderness Society.
Well, there's some very good people in the Wilderness Society. Unfortunately, their officers did not allow the National Parks and Wildlife Service to talk to the general body of the Wilderness Society. So a lot of their members are misinformed and not informed correctly about the plan of management.
The management plan has generated a record number of submissions. More than 1,600 groups and individuals want a say in the future of this unique World Heritage Area. The final decision will rest with State Environment Minister Tim Moore.
The Day of Peace is celebrated by countries throughout the world. In 1986, it was designated a special day by the United Nations. Although it has only 70 members, the Hunter branch of the United Nations Association of Australia is quick to spread its message that peace cannot reign while military weapons and violence exist, a point which was tested today when the peace gathering was followed by a demonstration of the Japanese martial art form Aikido.
Although there are a few pleasant surprises for the Hunter in the 89 budget, there are also a few unpleasant ones. In some cases, country areas will benefit significantly more than the cities. The shocking state of many rural roads has been highlighted this year. The budget addresses the problem. Almost $1.3 billion has been allocated to roads, 60% to be spent in country areas. The Hunter will benefit from more than $56 million of that. Numerous projects across the valley made the list, including the F3 freeway, which will receive an injection of $2 million, and major roadworks in the Cessnock-Walls End area to be done at a cost of $7.7 million. The road funding is part of a massive capital works program. In line with what Premier Greiner calls the focus on essentials in this budget, health is a winner. Local representatives in the big list of major works winners are Gosford Hospital, down for a $17 million overhaul, $36 million towards the continuing cost of the Rankin Park Teaching Hospital, and $2.7 million for the refurbishment of Newcastle Hospital's antiquated kitchen facilities. However, the medical profession will be disappointed with the allocation of funds in this year's budget for the repair of Hunter hospitals. $90 million has been allocated across the state, but only $4.8 million earmarked for work locally. At the Royal, for example, $700,000 has to go towards new orthopaedic services, open new beds, and towards a new recovery ward. The government says this budget is about building for the future, a policy reflected in the education allowance. 25 new or replacement schools account for the largest part of the $206 million. Locally, new high schools will be built at Mount View and Foster, and new primary schools, classrooms or buildings constructed in several other locations. Other local highlights include a promise to lift the compensation paid for resumed coal rights by 40 cents a tonne and more than $130 million to be spent on improvements to Hunter power stations. Public concern has pushed the environment to the fore this year, and the state government obviously believes it's going to stay there. A big increase in spending on the environment is represented in the Hunter in the form of major coastal protection work at Stockton, ongoing construction of the Burwood Beach sewage plant, and continuing clean-up work on the Tuggerah Lakes. Rosshampton, NBN News.
Along with the host side, Central Coast, Illawarra, Tamworth and Bathurst will send teams to the second Country Under-21 Championships. In the inaugural year, the strong Newcastle side went through undefeated and with a couple of additions to the squad, looks a standout for the carnival once again. But tough opposition is expected to come from the Central Coast. Newcastle's coach Ian Lewis is extremely happy with the makeup of the team.
It's not going to be easy to beat, let me say that. They won it last year very simply and very easily. Although Central Coast have improved a little bit this year, and Illawarra are now in, they weren't there last year. But I'm pretty happy with the side that the selectors have given me. They're all playing first grade, they're all either New South Wales country reps or state reps. A couple of them have been in the Australian Development Squad, and of course Justin Weaver's just come back with the Australian team from Quebec. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that sort of a side.
Dawn Gilbert has not spent a day or night in the last 18 months without agonising over the murder of her daughter. In March last year, her 20-year-old daughter Tracy Lee Gilbert was working in a Woodbury hairdressing salon when she was shot dead by her former boyfriend, 28-year-old Craig Brudelin. Brudelin was arrested after turning his rifle on himself, losing an eye and damaging another. Today's news that Brudelin's sentence had been reduced was met with anger and fear by Mrs. Gilbert.
What's going to happen if he gets out of prison, say in 8 years' time?
I don't know what's going to happen, but he left a note to say he was going to murder 2 people, 2 girls on that day. It's never been really proven who the other one was. Well, that girl that thinks it's her lives in fear, along with all of us.
On NBN's Newsnight last night, Corrective Services Minister Michael Yabsley said truth in sentencing legislation is soon to be introduced to keep murderers in jail.
From here on in, from the time the legislation is passed before the end of this year and is enacted, life will mean life. In other words, someone who receives a life sentence will die in jail.
However, Mr Yabsley did admit fewer life sentences would be imposed. Dawn Gilbert says she is frustrated with a system which shows any leniency to murderers.
Well, what do you think about the law?
We got a law, have we? We haven't got a law for the victims. We have a law for the criminals, but I don't think there's anything for the victims.
The children at Camp Quality all have one thing in common: cancer. Lengthy hospital stays and demanding treatment programs often isolate them from other kids. The instigators of Camp Quality recognise the need to give children with cancer a special opportunity for social interaction. The idea is to pack as much fun as possible into 5 days. Everything from helicopter joy flights to learning to play the didgeridoo. Each child receives individual care from a volunteer companion. Medical staff and camp organisers strive to give the children a fun-filled week free of pain. The kids aren't pushed into any activity. Like most kids, they don't need any pushing. What's your favourite thing that you've done so far this week?
Abseiling.
Why is that?
Because I like doing it, because I like going down the wall. It's fun. I've been canoeing, sailing and craft.
Horse riding and riding in the bus.
A break in today's gloomy skies and the chance to learn the finer points of boomerang throwing.
We can't control the quantity of life, but we can very much improve the quality of life, so hence the name Camp Quality.